We are live, and we're going to get right into it because that's the way we should do it, even though you can't watch the show yet because it's not posted in anything. So hold on one second. Before we do that, let me just put the show somewhere. We can't go quite that fast, but okay, hold on.
While Eck is posting
Yes.
some news this afternoon, there was an environmental study in Seattle regarding a new arena, and apparently it was a positive. So it sounds like the new arena in Seattle is going to go forward, which of course is going to spring the speculation of an NHL franchise going to Seattle. That coupled with Vegas and what's going on in Quebec City. I mean, to me, Kevin, expansion is a foregone conclusion. It's just a question of where and when.
Yeah, no, I would agree. I think, Bettman likes things buttoned up, and I think ultimately Quebec City will end up with an NHL franchise. I just don't know whether it'll be when they want to come in. It'll be when it best fits the league's agenda. Yeah, putting a franchise in Canada is kind of like low-hanging fruit. You pick that when you're ready, and Seattle, and to a lesser extent Las Vegas. They're just helpful in terms of completing the Western Conference and balancing out the two conferences. And Seattle gives them a larger television market as well, which always helps. But really what it does is creates sort of a Western corridor, which makes it easier for teams like Anaheim and Los Angeles and San Jose and Arizona. And now you bring in Las Vegas. There's a lot of teams now all of a sudden, because Vancouver's out there too in the in the far western time zones. So this will be a good thing whenever they get around to it. I think we're probably looking at 2018 would be just a guess,
Right.
But we'll see.
Yeah, and Quebec seems to be following the Winnipeg model in terms of don't make a big stink, don't make a big public splash, just play along with what the NHL wants to do, and if you do that and you play your cards right, you'll get your team, but you have to follow the agenda that the NHL wants. If you do a Jim Balsley, you're going to end up being on the outside looking in.
Well, for sure. I mean, what Balsillie did really created a messy situation for the NHL, and it actually sort of created a messy situation for the whole legal community, because he really sort of took on the U.S. franchising system, which is pretty important to the business world. So
I'll say.
Yeah, I don't know whether I'm not enough of a legal scholar to know whether that would have spilled over into setting a precedent for McDonald's and Wendy's and Dunkin' Donuts and Subway and so forth. But I think there's always kind of a danger of that, which what is why you got to fight those situations.
Yeah, that's something. Balsillie just did everything wrong. I mean, he definitely he's tried even since then. I think he's still trying. I think to get on the NHL's good side. I mean, but I think that there were just a lot of people there that really took offense to the way he did things. And he was being told not to do specific things that he would do. He very specifically would just go out and do exactly what he was told not to do.
Yeah.
And you're right. Winnipeg laid low for a long time. Quebec has been laying low. Yeah, they're getting back. They're going to get a team back. Let's get going here. All right, Thursday, May 7th. Ready? Hello, Hockey World. It's Thursday, May 7th, 2015.
I'm Michael Agello.
I'm Kevin Allen of USA Today Sports.
And I am Eklund, and you're watching the HockeyBuzzCast on HockeyBuzz.com. Soon coming to you on the Alpha Geek Radio Network, which is going to be starting next week, which is a really exciting announcement we'll talk more about later. Kevin doesn't even know about this yet because I didn't get a chance to talk to him about it today. I talked to Mike about it briefly, but it's Alpha Geek Radio, which is going to be we can't wait. It's going to make us more visible to a lot of people. So that's next week. But for now, we're still just on little old HockeyBuzz.com only. And let's start here though. But because last night Kevin's in Tampa, and oh my gosh, you are what a game! You've seen a couple really good games. There's something about you going to games. I mean, you were at the first Nashville-Chicago game, which was an amazing game. This was right up there too.
It was, and what's fascinating about it is the Montreal Canadiens have played really poorly and lost, and they've played now really well and lost. There seems to be a theme here, and that is that they lose. They played just a terrific game. The Canadiens did. They did all that they could do to beat the Tampa Bay Lightning, who have a skill advantage, as we've talked about in the past. Like, they played just a terrific road game, but they ran into Ben Bishop, who has just been terrific since Game 6 of the Detroit series, and he's at a 962 save percentage since then. He's 6'7", and he stood tall, in that game yesterday. And then at the end, and I thought Steven Stamkos said, we just pulled a rabbit out of the hat. Which I thought was a pretty appropriate cliche to use, because that's what it seemed like. I mean, the Lightning admitted they got a little lucky there at the end, but I thought it was interesting. Anton Strawman said that he thought it showed character. Like, when they got that tying goal, he said that's when he felt like the team actually started to sort of get its act together. It had played poorly for most of that game. And then in the final stages of the third period, they started to move the puck better, and they started to play, like the Tampa Bay Lightning that we've seen now for the last 5 games. And and once that happened, it was more difficult for the Canadiens to deal with it. And then, who was there but Tyler Johnson, who's making a case to be the 2-round Conn Smythe Trophy winner.
I don't think
there's been anybody better than him in the first couple of rounds. But when you can win in the postseason when you don't play well, I think that just speaks to you may be becoming that team of destiny that we were talking about yesterday, or at least a team that is capable of going to the finals and competing. I mean, among the elite 2 in the league.
Yeah, it's funny because I thought the third period of last night's game was the best period that Montreal had since Game 1, the second period of Game 1 against Ottawa, when they scored 4 goals against Andrew Hammond.
Yeah.
And I thought they dominated from about the midpoint of the second period through to the third period. They dominated that game. They had more of the offensive chances. Tampa was one of the fastest teams in the league. They looked slow and indecisive. They looked like Tampa did during the Detroit series. And then in the last minute, Tampa hemmed them in the zone and got the winning goal with, I think it was 1.1 seconds left. And I don't know, 3-0. I mean, and the thing is that Montreal did everything that we said yesterday that they would have to do to win. They limited Tampa to 19 shots on goal. They had 31 shots on Bishop. Bishop played really well. They just didn't get the game-winning goal. They didn't take advantage of a few more scoring opportunities than Tampa did, and Tampa got that goal as in the waning seconds. So 3-0 is, to me, virtually impossible. I mean, we've seen it with Philadelphia and Boston and San Jose and LA, but I don't pick up on the vibe that Montreal has got it to win 4 straight against Tampa.
No, I mean, it doesn't. It really doesn't. It doesn't seem likely at all.
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting. I was watching that Canadiens team last night, and certainly they've been impressive with the way they've held on to the division this season. And Carey Price, as we've said yesterday, was a huge part of all that. But they still really are a good team. Like, they compete really hard, and they have a lot of quickness. But I think what really hurts them when I was watching that is Galchenyuk, who is a skilled player, just hasn't really quite gotten that next step in his development where, to take him to the place where Tyler Johnson is now, or at least in that neighborhood. And, if he would step up and sort of be that flag-carrying offensive star, then, they would be better off. They're just short of star power, a little bit short in the guys that can, when the game's on the line, that they can step up and, get a goal like Johnson and Hedman did.
Yeah, and the funny thing is that, just on purpose, because I wanted to see what the reaction would be, I listened to one of the Montreal radio stations this morning to hear what the critique was of some of the fan base. And, obviously Price can't be blamed because I think he's played like Carey Price in the playoffs. He's played wonderfully. Brendan Gallagher was showing a lot of effort, got the goal to tie the game. But the guys like Subban and Pacioretty and Galchenyuk, who was supposed to step up this year and get to another level, and to an extent, Plekanec and Desharnais, they were taking most of the heat. And that's the thing. That team has weapons, but they don't have a lot of weapons. So when they don't have a lot, they need those players to produce, and they have not produced. So as Kevin and I have said, I think that team is at a level where they need to add players. They need to get some more scoring, and if they do that in the summer, they'll be right back. And I'm writing the postmortem here, but I know it's Game 4 tonight, but they need a couple more weapons to really fight those teams like Tampa and the Rangers in the East.
Yeah, there's a lot of teams that are improving in the East. It's you really, if you're not moving forward, you're standing still in both conferences right now. And I think that's the big thing. You have to, all these teams, that have, some of these teams that just made the playoffs this year, even the teams that made the playoffs for the first time, like, is Ottawa going to be back next year? For sure, who knows? Is Pittsburgh going to be able to be back? You'd think so, but I mean, I think there's a couple things that came up last night. The first thing I want to know, I guess this is for Kevin, is that where is Tyler Johnson now on Team USA's depth chart? I mean, he's really.
Well,
definitely.
I think he's the number one center.
Yeah.
I don't even think it's close. I mean, Stepan is there as well, but
yeah.
Pavelski, I think, is better suited in international competition to play on the wing anyway. And Backus, I think, can play both wing and center. So to me, it's Tyler Johnson and maybe Stepan and Kessler as your 3 or Kessler as your 2.
Yeah.
Depending on how you view it. But I think Tyler Anderson has suddenly become the most dynamic American-born player. That's probably not true. It's still probably Patrick Kane, but he's definitely the most dynamic center.
Well, so Johnson and Kane, and who would be their winger on the first line then for Team USA?
Well, probably Parisi.
Yeah.
Parisi.
Well, maybe. I mean, based on wanting to keep the teams players with the same team together, it could be Kane and Saad. You could have Kessel and Van Riemsdyk. I mean, the U.S. have a ton of talent on the wings. That's why, like, if we're talking about the Olympics in 3 years, could be Jack Eichel up the middle, depending on how good he is.
Yeah.
I think Tyler Johnson will be the number 1 probably, but I think Eichel will be going up with a bullet at that point because he'll be.
Yeah, I think 2 of the guys you just mentioned aren't even locks to be on that team in 2018. Right now, Van Riemsdyk and Kessel, are they going to be there?
Yeah.
You would guess. I mean, but I don't think that's a lock. I think we're going to see some turnover. There's some really good players coming. I watched the World Championships today, and it was a big surprising upset by Belarus over USA, which moves USA down to second. Which, in the grand scheme of things, actually may not be so horrible because. Right now, the Czechs are sitting in the number 4 spot in the other pool. So the reward for winning your pool could be playing the Czechs in their hometown with Jaromir Jagr.
Yeah, right.
Flag. I mean, I'm not so sure that's such a good deal. This goes to maybe in this tournament they should use the Kevin Allen rule about you should be able to say who you play. And I'm just out on playing the Czechs in the Czech Republic. With Jaromir Jagr leading the way.
Yeah.
But the one thing I took note of is, I watched Vesey, and I watched Riley and Dylan Larkin and Eichel. And even though the team lost, like, they were really noticeable. And the one thing I thought as I'm watching them is, 2018, if the NHL goes to, South Korea, I'm not so sure those guys might not be there.
I know.
They're just, both Larkin and Eichel are just great skaters. Eichel's a powerful guy, and he made 2 big passes for goals today. And, he's had some adjustment period over there, playing against pros for the first time. It's not like he's lighting it up, but he had 2 assists today, and he looked a lot more comfortable. And he's centering NHL players. So Mike's right. Like, you can't rule it out. I think Eichel probably will play for that under-23 team. And that under-23 team in the World Cup, like I keep saying, if Gibson is healthy and plays, and now you're going to have Seth Jones, you're going to have Trouba, you're going to have Eichel, maybe Connor McDavid. This could be a really good team. Brandon Saad. I mean, this is.
Kevin, I'm rooting for that team. I'm telling you right now, I'm rooting for that team.
It's just going to be messy.
Well, it's going to kill the team. It's going to kill Team USA. That at the end of the day.
I'm not. It will kill. It will kill the. It will be hard to defend if they lose to it. But the American team is pretty good.
It is good, but there's some. I mean, Eichel's a definite in my mind. But, well, maybe not a definite, but obviously, there's no question that Seth Jones will be on that team, and that's a big player.
Yeah, there's 3 or 4 guys that will be on that team that would be on the big team. Seth Jones has been phenomenal over at the World Championships, and he was really good this year. So
Seth Jones, and Aaron Ekblad.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, for sure that team, the U.S. is going to be hurt more by the under-23 team than any of the other countries. Can we agree with that one?
Oh, well, there's only going to be 2 countries, but yeah,
right.
No one on Canada's team is going to make that. That Canada will be on that team. I mean, Nathan McKinnon's the only guy that you can sort of think about, but he wasn't going to make Team Canada. I mean, they got right. 10 or 11 centers that
right.
are skillful like he is. So
exactly.
Unless they're thinking we got to go like a speed team, because he is just one hellacious skater. So
yeah, he is incredibly fast.
Yeah.
I mean,
in spite of the fact that Canada is so stacked up the middle, I have a weird feeling that Hockey Canada, if they could, would have been tempted to put McDavid on that team.
Yeah, I don't think so. Their history says they take the veteran guys. Yeah, and it's hard because they want those guys to answer the call and all that. So,
right.
So that's a hard one. That's a hard situation.
And we're only talking about a year from now, really. So that's. I mean, at the Olympics, I think McDavid, you can make a case. I mean, at that point, McDavid is going to be a force, perhaps.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
He could definitely be.
I mean, if he's Crosby, he's going to be in the first 2 seasons. He's going to be pretty well established.
Yeah, that he's in, right?
I mean, there is precedent, because I think didn't Lindros make the one Canada Cup, and then I know he played in the Olympics in '92 while he was holding out from Quebec.
He played in the World Cup of Hockey before he played in the NHL.
Right, exactly. But
yeah, I mean, but then there was that holdout year, so it was a little bit different. But yeah, you could really feel yesterday. I don't know if you could feel it in the building or not, but on TV, Kevin, it was obvious that the Canadiens were holding on for dear life to get to that overtime. There was like a feeling like they just were in trouble, even though, and it wasn't surprising to me when Tampa scored that goal.
Yeah, mostly they had carried the play, but it turned. You're right, it did turn, and it just felt like a different game in the last 5 minutes.
Yeah, especially even the last 2 minutes. And the intensity level just came down all of a sudden.
Yeah,
the Canadiens were making just plays like they were killing the clock. They were no longer attacking.
I don't think they were hanging on to get to overtime as much as they were. They just thought they were going to overtime.
Right.
Like it didn't even occur to them that Tampa Bay might get another goal. I mean, basically they had stymied them for the entire game, and they just didn't entertain the idea that Tampa Bay would turn it on in the final, couple of minutes.
They sort of mentally relaxed, maybe.
Yeah, no, that's well put. They relaxed too much, and the Lightning didn't quit. They just kept going.
What's the building like? What's the excitement like in that building? Is the level pretty good?
Part of the building?
Yeah.
Oh, it's fantastic.
Was it?
Yeah, and the Lightning in-game experience is quality as well. Like, it's fun to see a game in Tampa Bay. They just make it interesting. There's a lot going on in the stands. They have some amusing promotional events, and there's a lot of milling about. That I didn't see it, but I heard on my shuttle ride over to the arena that there was going to be, like they do in Pittsburgh, there was going to be a big screen outside, so people who couldn't get in. I talked to a guy on the shuttle. I was stunned at how inexpensive the tickets were for the second round. Like, he was sitting up in the third level, and he just bought it at Ticketmaster because he had 2 sons who live in Florida and had Florida, addresses and such, so he could order his tickets. And
Right.
and he said it was he said it was $73.
Wow.
Which I think for the second round, given what I know of other prices around the league, quite reasonable.
No, that's extremely reasonable. Holy cow.
If that was the playoffs in Toronto, you couldn't buy a hot dog at the ACC for $73.
Yeah, and Montreal tickets, you can't imagine what they are for this series. So in Montreal, I mean, they're double that probably.
Well, I met another guy who was sitting a lot closer. He was from Toronto, and he just came here to see the game. And he said that the face value on his ticket was $114.
Wow.
But he paid $200 through whatever.
Yeah.
He was
still really cheap. I mean, they're low down in a playoff game. I mean, that's...
Yeah, absolutely. So it's really fascinating. I was on a shuttle with 3 people who were talking hockey, and I always enjoy the experience to hear people's viewpoints of everything. Like, this was one guy was from Buffalo, one was from Toronto, and one of them actually was from Detroit. And they got into discussions on a variety of subjects, including arenas and their perceptions of things. And and never at any point did I, raise my hand and say, "Excuse me, but I've covered the league for, the War of the Roses, and some of your opinions, just don't hold water." I never said that. I just listened very intently. But it's just fascinating, their perspective on the Buffalo fans, and how many. The one guy from Toronto said, like, for example, that half the people in the Buffalo building are, Ontario natives, when, I know the statistic to be that 15% of their ticket purchases are from Canada. And another guy offered that the, Red Wings now played at half-empty buildings.
Right.
And the guy said, from Toronto, said, yep. He could testify to that because he went down there to see a game, and they basically said, "You can sit wherever you want." He said,
That's fascinating.
Yeah, it was really, really kind of interesting. And then there was a third guy who was talking about various games he had been to. He had actually seen the Madison Square Garden renovated, and said it was just the coolest thing in the world, and talked about the ring, where we sat. And
that's really nice.
He had a pretty good handle on life in the NHL, and they got into an interesting discussion on Del Zotto, and I couldn't quite overhear everything, but it seemed like somebody there had some relative who might have dated Del Zotto back when he was drafted, and so they were venturing opinions on his talent and his ability,
yes,
and whether he was going to be a very good player or not, and whether he had been drafted in the right spot. It was really quite fascinating.
He is definitely a hotbed for things like that. No pun intended. Yeah, but no, definitely that's my favorite story about something like that was the bus in Vancouver. I took the bus from where I was staying, because I was staying with a family in Vancouver during the Olympics. I took the bus from that family's place to the arena for every game, and this particular one, I was taking the bus from the family's place to the arena for the Canada-U.S. gold medal game. And being on the bus in that situation, in that building, I mean, that was incredibly crazy, right? So there's people, not even going to the game, but just people decked out. They keep singing "Oh Canada," and this little old couple got on at one stop, and they were just going to the market. They had their groceries with them, and they get on the bus, and it's like, "Oh Canada," people are freaking out, and the older guy looks at me, he must be 60 or something. He says, "So," he saw the credential around my neck. He figured I was probably with the media, had the Olympics. He's like, "So, is there a big event today or something?" I'm like, "Yeah, there's a big event. Canada is playing the U.S. in hockey for the gold medal." And he's like, "Oh, that explains it. We've been wondering all morning what the heck was going on in this town." And it was just like this 270-year-old. There was we're in Vancouver and managed to not know what was happening.
Just completely oblivious.
Yeah, like they were going about their lives.
There were 3 people in Canada who didn't know
about
that game, and you found them.
I found them. They literally did not have any idea what was happening, and they were just, we were like, yeah, the market was crazy. Everybody was buying all sorts of things. We thought there was some kind of big storm coming or something. I'm like, yeah, no, it's just people are wearing Team Canada jerseys everywhere while I'm telling them this. It's obvious. We're crammed onto a bus, but yeah, it's fun stuff. Fun stuff. So meanwhile, last night in the other game of interest, the Rangers, take the lead. They get up. They look like they were, again, Lundqvist played really well, and again, the Caps just found a way. This Capital team is finding a way, to win right now. And one of the interesting thing about the Rangers, last night, someone told me this, and I was trying to look up exactly what it was. Here it is. It's that the Rangers set a record last night, which was interesting. I don't know if you guys saw this or not. That the Rangers have now played 11 consecutive playoff games decided by one goal,
Wow.
which is an NHL record. No other team has done that. So that's pretty crazy. And I did not realize that every game last year in the Rangers-Kings Stanley Cup Final was a one-goal game. I did not. That's pretty crazy, right? Was every game a one-goal game, or I guess it would have been.
Well, that would have been the last two games because they played 5 against.
Oh, right.
Pittsburgh.
Okay. Right. Yes. Right. Okay. Yeah. So they're 11. That's 11 straight one-goal games. The Caps look like, they just Holtby has such a zenness about him right now. When you watch him play, there's he really has that I'm a great goalie and we're just practicing look to him. You know what I mean? That's just like he really does not. He's so calm. He's
calm and he's confident, and you could tell that especially on the penalty shot with Hagelin because he just snapped the left hand out there and snagged that the backhander from Hagelin. At a really very crucial point of the game, 2-1 with a little under 10 minutes left to go in the third period, and they get a penalty shot because of Mike Green, hooking Hagelin, and I didn't pick up one moment of hesitation with Holtby. He made a fantastic save. Now the thing is, and I picked up on this, and I exchanged messages with Russ Cohen last night, and he sort of agreed with this. If you look at it, in the last 2 or 3 minutes of that game, I know McDonough was out there, but most of the time the two defensemen who were out there when the Rangers were trying to tie the game were Yandel and Dan Boyle. And I know that they added Boyle for experience, and they added Yandel for his offense. But honestly, when you go to the finals last year and your main guys were Stahl and McDonough and Girardi, I think those still have to be your main guys, even though I think Yandel's a very good offensive defenseman and Boyle's got a lot of experience. And I saw too much of Dan Boyle and too much of Keith Yandel in the last couple minutes of that third period. And not to say that was the reason they lost, but I think that they have to. I think Valley and Vigneault's got to go back to giving McDonough and Girardi and Stahl the majority of the ice time because I think they're the three best defensemen on either team.
I would say putting Keith Yandel out there makes a lot of sense. When you start rating offensive defensemen,
sure,
he's in the top 3. But why wouldn't you put McDonough out there? I think McDonough is underrated as an offensive player. I think he's a good passer and handles the puck fairly well. He's not the second coming of Carlson, but he's a pretty a decently skilled player. So I would have him out there, but I wouldn't beef with having Yandel out there. You're pressing, you're trying to get a goal. Why not utilize the one of the better offensive defensemen in the league?
So what's interesting? Another interesting thing here about this whole thing is that this round could be over quickly. I was just noticing this. We could be done by the weekend. Because tonight, right? Isn't that right? Saturday. Because there could be no game on Saturday. Sunday, Calgary and Anaheim play, and that's a definite game. They have to play. But Chicago could finish it tonight. And if they don't, then they'll go Saturday. But yeah, by Sunday night we're definitely done.
And it's not like the NBA where, at least it used to be. I don't know if the NBA is locked in their schedule. I know in some instances the NBA will start, since they're bracketed, will start a second round series before a first round series is completed.
Right.
But with the NHL, if all these series end in 5 games, what is that going to mean? 6 days off between the next series, the next round?
I don't know. What do you think, Kev? Did they try to get us going?
Well, in recent years, they've had some television commitments as well, but generally what they've had is a couple of alternate schedules. Like they've worked out, like, they have 2 different times when
Right.
the next round could start. So if they hit one of those, then they'll start it on the earlier time slot.
Yes.
So, and I would assume if everything was wrapped up by 5, you would hit one of those. I think once one series goes to 6 games, then you're locked into what they know as their last date.
Right. That would make sense. Yeah, and but for convenience sake, and that, Kevin, that's always how it works in the most inconvenient way possible.
Yeah.
This is going to mess me up because of my daughter's bat mitzvah. This is going to push the Stanley Cup final ahead, which is going to screw me. So I can see it now clearly.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure that's exactly why it will happen. And
yes.
The expression in my world is whatever will inconvenience the greatest number of journalists will occur.
But you actually, yes, precisely. But you actually, this is a good gig to go down to Tampa for these 2 games in 2 days. That's pretty. That's a rarity. It's kind of a rarity to get. You don't have to deal with a day off today.
Yeah, well, that's one way of looking at it. But yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And I was thinking today, the new form journalism is a lot less hectic than the old form, because the difference between a lot of the bloggers is they don't have to go talk to people.
Right.
They just sit and pontificate, and I still have to go down and chat with people and get the story and then go back and write it and then write a story, a plugger story to hold for my story that's going in that night. So
right.
So yeah, a day like this when there's 2 games in a row, it's a little less complicated. It's almost getting though where the off days are actually easier, because then you're just going down and doing the practices.
Right.
And you're not writing the who's not in and who is story in the morning.
Right.
Which is suddenly, everybody again, this is a tilapia all over again. Everybody woke up on a Tuesday morning about 3 years ago and said, I think it's really important who the scratches are going to be.
Right.
And we should just really report the heck out of that. And sure enough, we do know. Now it's like, as soon as the coach says, well, Joe Schmo's not going tonight, man, everybody's on Twitter and, reporting that Schmo is
he's out.
Is out and Jones is in.
So Jones will now. Right, Jones will now play the 4 or 5 minutes that the other guy would have played.
yeah, it is pretty amazing. But we've always had that going on, but it just became important. People just thought, I think we've missed the boat on that. We should really be reporting. Who that.
I wonder why. Is it?
It's content. Twitter. It's content.
That's just a desperate need for content.
Yeah. They report line combos on Twitter.
Yeah. Well, I think it's the guys who there and show up, they want to be able to get the scoop.
Right.
The new wave journalists that don't or can't or won't, one of the above.
Right.
They're not there, so they can't get the scoop until they retweet it or steal. The line combinations.
Right.
And the scratches.
Retweet in parentheses, steal.
Yeah.
No, I like it. I agree, but this is the funny thing about line combinations that's always cracked me up, is that they really they only hold true for like the first shift of the game. It feels like the line combinations are so transient anyway. It's very rare that the line combinations matter after we're 10 minutes into the first period. So
I got to tell you a story though. I started covering the league, and I sat next to a veteran Canadian writer. I wonder if I should say who it was. I'm not going to. But anyway, he sat next to me and he goes, what's the deal with you Americans' fascination with line combinations? He said, watch the damn game. He said, I watch you American reporters and you're scribbling down and you're, watch the damn game. And I've often thought about that as I scribble my line combinations down, and
That's so funny. I know
well,
that.
it used to be that no hockey writer, like I've seen 600 playoff games, and I've missed 600 third periods because I've had to write during the third period.
Yeah.
To get ready for the game, and I wonder how much hockey the relentless Twitter users
there's no
now
question.
seeing.
Yes, that is my biggest pet peeve. I sit there and I watch guys like next to me, and I mean I have a lot of Twitter followers, granted, and even I don't. I hate people play-by-playing on Twitter. I hate that. I hate there's that'll be a face-off, like tweeting out that'll be a face-off or whatever. Just it makes me like you said, they're missing the game.
Yeah.
And I watch people who have, and this sounds obnoxious or whatever, but like a couple hundred Twitter followers that work for a newspaper that are actually paying them to be there, and they're tweeting out to couple hundred Twitter followers while the game is going on. And I'm just
carrying on conversations with those followers.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So no, it's interesting. I say that without actually comment because hey, this is the new world, and maybe I'm the one that's.
I don't really want to be the 10th person to say Phil Kessel scored his 25th goal from James Van Riemsdyk and Tyler Bozak at 6:41.
Yeah, I
want to bring something different to it. I want to bring a little bit of perspective or some added thing because everybody can say Kessel scored.
Like I'm not going to assume that 180,000 people that follow me on Twitter are at a wedding, away from any possible it feels like like if I was at a wedding, I would really be happy that someone was tweeting out this kind of information because I couldn't watch the game, I couldn't see the game, there was no way I could listen to the game, and then that information would be vital to me. Besides that,
no, that's right.
But besides that, how many of these people are actually out of touch in some way, shape, or form? I mean, you figure most of them are watching the game, and you just have to.
I mean, where was Twitter in the 1970s when I was in college?
Right. I mean, you would have gotten through with that, right? But that, to me, yeah, I mean, and I agree. I don't like to write during the games at all. In fact, I try not to even open my laptop because I really do want to watch the game. I really do want to try to take it all in. I'm lucky that I don't have a deadline like you guys do at the end of the game where I have to get something out right away, so I can actually watch. Because I see you and I see other people trying to put their stories together as the game's wrapping up, and it's tricky. It's really you've got a couple different stories going. If this happens, if that happens, you're playing these different things, and I get it, and you're setting up your quotes, and it's really hard, and I don't know how you can watch the third period of the games, which is really when everything's happening. So
yeah, well, it just becomes what you do. I've been doing.
Yeah, no, it's a second nature for you.
It's really not that, but I don't know whether the game story is as well. It's certainly not as significant as it once was because generally there's so much information available. I think what Mike said about Twitter is true also about story writing. Is you got to tell a story that's a little bit different than the Victor Hedman slid a goal mouth pass to Tyler Johnson and. They won it. You got to bring some perspective to it, and it's got to be really layered. And the more layers you have, the better it is. And
totally.
We're all, writing interpretively now in terms of, there's much more opinion. Even at USA Today, there's a lot more of Kevin Allen in that story than there was 5 or 6 years ago.
For sure, which is a good thing, and I think that goes back to my whole theory that news is a commodity, and that really what people want is people talking. They want to hear what you have to say about it, what I have to say about it, and what Mike has to say about it, not the news themselves, which they already know about. But speaking of which, the news, and this is not a good thing for the Wild to be actually touting the fact that they are going to try to get Thomas Vanek going tonight. This is not a good. It's not a good sign that they believe, that changing their lineup can create some space for Thomas Vanek, who's gotten the nickname Thomas Vanish lately, which is really pretty funny.
Jeez.
But yeah, I mean, Thomas Vanek, I mean, he is not the reason that the Wild are where they are, and he's not going to get them out of this situation. This is not going to help them, in my opinion. Either
well, he
way.
may not be the reason they are where they are, but he can help them escape from where they are, and he hasn't been able to do that. That's that is the truth. So.
And he didn't really help Montreal last year in the same situation. I mean, he had a good couple games, I guess, in the playoffs for Montreal, but
scored a few goals for Montreal.
He had a couple goals. There was one of the playoff rounds, I guess.
I thought he took a lot more heat in Montreal than he deserved last year, and I don't think he's the reason why the Wild are down 3-0 to the Hawks. I mean, they're down 3-0 to the Hawks because the Hawks have gone to another gear. They got a great goaltending performance out of Corey Crawford in Game 3. Patrick Kane is not showing any kind of signs of problems after coming back way too early from that collarbone injury. And they have Jonathan Taves. And, I think the Wild are a fantastic team, but up the middle, they can't match up with the Hawks. And that's where, I thought the Hawks had the advantage over the Blues, over the Predators, and over the Wild in the Central Division. And if they do meet the Anaheim Ducks in the conference final, that's when they'll meet their match because Anaheim has Getzlaf and Kessler going 1-2. So until that, they have the advantage up the middle, and that's a tough advantage to get past.
In a big way.
Yeah, the Wild don't believe this, so they will never do this. But it would be refreshing if just say they get swept, for someone in the Wild to come out and say, there was really nothing we could do to win this series. The Blackhawks were a better team. They're at a higher level. They're on a different plane right now. And, we played hard. We gave it all we had. But ultimately, we just have to give credit to the Blackhawks for really kind of turning it up. Now, the problem is they don't believe that because, you never believe that whatever the team is doing is enough to stop you.
Right. You never do. I mean, they could come out and say, well, our only hope, really, in actuality, is the fact that these big contracts for Kane and Taves kick in next year, and they won't be able to keep their team together.
No, that is right. But it was funny because I saw a glimpse of that last night. When Carey Price was asked whether he should have stopped that shot, what did he say? I think I'm going to stop every shot.
Right.
And I guess that's where you have to be if you're going to be an NHL player. So, I guess we can't blame them for, believing they're going to go in. Now, obviously the Minnesota Wild are capable of beating the Chicago Blackhawks. I'm not suggesting that they're that much better. I'm just saying, I'm just using this as an example to say that everyone always acts as if they're out there by themselves. There is no opponent, and in this case, the opponent is playing very, very well. And
it would be a good book, Kevin, is these teams they're like the Wild. The Wild have lost now 3 times to the Blackhawks, right? And they're a good team. I always remember like the Calgary Flames and the Edmonton Oilers era. We're such a good team. The Winnipeg Jets of that era were also a really good team, but couldn't get anywhere. Because these teams that just end up being caught behind epic teams, and they never really come to fruition. I mean, the Flyers had a couple teams like that too. But just these are great teams, but they get stuck. I mean, that would be an interesting story, I think, at some point to write about.
Well, over time, like I've done some books about the Red Wings, and I talk about those really good, Bob Probert teams from the late 80s, and they ended up losing in the conference finals to the Edmonton Oilers.
Yeah.
And back then, I'm sure they were bitter, and now when you talk to them, they say, well, we got as far as we could go. And then we ran into Gretzky, and it's over.
They were making all their changes back then.
So I guess there's a statute of limitation on lying to yourself.
Right.
And it must be roughly 20-some years. I think once you get beyond 20 years, you can admit, they were really better than us. So.
And here's something to make you feel old. Speaking of 20 years, what happened 20 years ago today? Anybody know this question?
Let's see, what year? Was it in the hockey world? Or?
Yeah, in the hockey world, very much. 1995. Yep.
Oh, was this the ref game?
Nope, this international thing that happened 20 years ago today.
May 7th, 1995.
Was, on 20 years ago today, Finland won its first gold medal.
Yeah, you know, I could have guessed all day, and I got that. So
It's pretty crazy, though. It makes you feel old, doesn't it?
yeah.
Holy cow. 20 years ago, Finland wins their first gold medal.
In the World
In
Championship.
the World Championship, yeah, but I remember it, though. I mean, it was very...
Wait a second.
No, it's not the Olympics.
Okay.
No, it's not the Olympics. But, yeah, that's... So, and the last thing I want to talk about before we get out of here is Teemu Pulkkinen is just gone nuts, Kevin. I mean, he's absolutely... I'm convinced this is to keep Mike Babcock around. The Red Wings players, you're seeing in the Worlds over, the other kid over, I can't remember his name, but over in the Worlds.
Mantha.
Right, no, not Mantha, but the other one who.
Dylan Larkin.
Yes, Dylan Larkin. Thank you. Sorry, but Dylan Larkin's playing amazing over there. Teemu Pulkkinen gets a hat trick last night, and has 9 goals in 6 playoff games so far.
Yeah. Well, the other thing too is for those who in the Detroit area paying attention on Twitter, the Berehowski quality game brought out those who said, look, if Berehowski can do that for Washington at his age, then why can't Dylan Larkin step right into our lineup and do that? Because Dylan Larkin is, as talented as he is. And because, a lot of us, old timers are saying, it's okay if he goes back to Michigan, and one more year will just make him stronger, and blah blah blah. You've heard it all, but it's a valid point. He's not going to set the world on fire at this age, but could he work into a lineup and play a role? I mean, his skating is so good.
Yeah.
The answer to that is yes. Of course he can.
I mean,
we see that all the time.
Yeah.
I saw Pulkkinen play 2 games in the first round of the AHL playoffs. I believe he led the AHL in goals with 34, I think it was, and he had 6 goals in the first round series against the Marlies. The funny thing is that reportedly he was part of the package deal for involving Dion Phaneuf at the deadline. That's been reported by a couple of different sources, and now maybe the Leafs were he's 23 years old, so he's getting a lot of goals at the AHL level, and the guys who are 23, maybe if they want the talent that he has, maybe they should be scoring as much.
No, but he's a Red Wing, so that's what 23-year-old Red Wings are. They just take
They're different, yeah.
Yeah, they're very different than other players because they just take their time with players like no other team does.
That's very true. The one caution I would put out about Pulkkinen is, having watched him at the NHL level. He requires some time and space to launch that missile launcher that he has, and when he has less of that at the NHL, his release doesn't seem quite quick enough. So he's going to actually have to work on that because he couldn't get that cannon off as much as he would have liked at the NHL level. It was pretty obvious, and the puck would end up in his feet, and some of those guys have it, like Brett Hull. He could find the puck no matter where it was. He just had a sense, so he had a radar. And they've compared him to Brett Hull. That's why I brought him up, because he has that same sort of stocky build, but he's not like that. When the puck is in his skates, he's got to look down and find it. And so he needs a little development in his timing. But it's a pretty ferocious shot. There's no doubt about it. It gets on you in a hurry, as the goalies say.
Yeah, and he's a Teemu Selanne guy. Didn't he grow up idolizing Teemu Selanne too? From what
I don't know the answer to that. It's not something I don't know about.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, that's all the time we have today. But it's man, I'm glad we're getting. I don't know if it's good for Montreal to be playing again tonight or bad. If they would rather have had a day off or what. I think if I'm a Canadian player, I'm glad we're playing tonight. Because you don't want to live on that for 48 hours. I think you need to get right back into the fray.
Well, I will say this. If they play as well as they did yesterday, they certainly have a shot to beat them. I mean, they could have won that game yesterday. I mean, I love how Tampa Bay is playing, but and I think they're a better team than Montreal, but Montreal, they followed that script last night. And they played a perfect road game.
Yeah.
They denied opportunities. They were good 5-on-5. They were active, engaged, and they just didn't get any luck. If they play like that again tonight, maybe they could win. Go back to Montreal and
I agree because, I mean,
I'd like
it
to see
seemed to me after Killorn scored the opening goal that Tampa was intent on not making a mistake to let Montreal score the tying goal. And I don't think they had a shot on goal in the second period until the last 5 minutes. I think I'm pretty sure there was
41. They went without a shot on goal.
yeah. So I
1841.
mean, yeah, you know, you can be defensively responsible. That's taking it to the point of ridiculousness.
Yeah. I'm
That's
with you.
not playing offense at all. I mean, and it was funny. I was not watching the game because I was running. I had to run some errands for the family. So in the beginning, so I'm driving around and I flipped it on XM and I'm listening to Michigan and the Tampa announcers. You know, that's another story. They're great, but they literally, it was one kind of thing. You're listening on the radio and I don't know the score. So, but I'm trying to get a sense from the announcers what the score is, and I'm thinking Montreal's up 5-0. Like the way they're acting, they're like, "Oh, Tampa again, we can't get out of the zone. Oh my gosh, there's another, oh man, another missed pass." And I'm like, "This is not a team that's up 2-0 in the second round of the playoffs. That were actually up 1-0 while I was listening to this, but they were winning. But I could have sworn, you know, they just so the Tampa announcers were even saying that." You know, Tampa's not playing well. This is terrible. It's falling apart. Everything like that. Yeah, and like you said, Kevin, they won a game they shouldn't have won, which is a sign of it. Which every team that wins Stanley Cups does. They all do that.
No.
I think
That's it. Got to get going, but I will talk to you guys soon. Remember, without the buzz, it is just hockey. See you then.